everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Winsor & Newton designer gouache. Now here I have a brand new set, the primary color set, but I also have some in other tubes that I've had for a while now. Spoiler alert, this is not my first impression really, or first look at Winsor & Newton designer gouache. I actually had, I think, this exact same set years ago. And let me just see what I have. I've got the old swatches. This is probably 10 years old or so. But I've got these old swatches, so we're going to be taking a look and seeing. But I think these colors are identical. I'm not sure. But this is the brand new set. My Michaels just got this in. So I was really excited when I saw it. I'm like, you know what? I've been wanting to pick up some Winsor & Newton gouache for a really long time. When I saw the set and I had a 40% off coupon and like a $10 voucher, I was like, yeah, I'm going to try that and review it for the channel. So today we're going to be doing an unboxing. We're going to be taking a look at it and talking about it a little bit, some of the qualities. We're going to be swatching it out. I have a chart here that I've prepared for each of the colors that I have. I have two variations of the white. The set comes with Zinc White and I have permanent white. Now I just wanted to show you, well, when we open it, I'll show you what a brand new tube looks like. This is like more than half empty. They're permanent white. Winsor & Newton's permanent white is the best white gouache you will ever use. I'm just going to tell you that, you know, no matter what other, I have a basket of gouache here from various brands, especially M. Graham. I really love theirs, but look at the ginormous white that I purchased. Okay, so this is how big your biggest tube from Winsor & Newton comes in their designer gouache. This is a 37 milliliter tube. That's like the size of almost an acrylic paint tube. And I had to pick this up because I was running a little bit low on this. And I tell you, no matter what brand of gouache I use, I want Winsor & Newton's permanent white. So we could definitely take a look and compare and contrast the differences between the two white. And I'll show you how they mix out as well. So we'll be doing that in real time. I also have some notes for you guys about pigment information and just some tips about what colors to avoid if light fastness is important to you. Not every color in this line is light fast, so we're going to be talking about it. But the good news is that Winsor & Newton does have many highly light fast colors in their designer's gouache line. They've got some genuine cadmiums, cobalts, quinacridones, oxide of chromiums, umbers, ultramarines. They're using genuine pigments. So this isn't like that stuff you get on Amazon from overseas and it's like a big pack for $20 and you get like 50 colors or something, but the work you produce with these can be sold as original pieces of artwork. So this can be used for fine artwork and for professional artists. So that's what's important to me. So let's go ahead and open this up and take a look. So in this 6-tube set, and I picked this up because I got it a really good deal. Otherwise, as an experienced artist, I would pick my own colors. But this isn't a bad set. I like the packaging. No matter when you pick up a set of Winsor & Newton, whether it's watercolor, gouache, acrylic, whatever, you get that crust on there and it just feels, it feels consistent. Like no matter how many times they change the tube's look, it just feels consistent. You get the nostalgia factor going. So there's your box. Inside you get 6 colors. You get the Zinc White, which is usually recommended for mixing. You get primary yellow, primary red, primary blue, permanent green, middle, and ivory black. And we're going to swatch all those plus their permanent white. You get this brochure here that goes over some information, and you also get a full color chart included. So if you don't, you know, obviously if you wanted to add more colors to your collection, you've got that information. But they don't put pigment information on this color chart, although it is available on their website and online and at other retailers like Jerry Jetarama and Blick. That's where I found a lot of my pigment information. So when you open it up, here's what it looks like. They are 14 milliliter tubes. This set, I believe, retails for around $59.99, but we never pay that, you know. I think I got mine for like close to $30 when it was all said and done. Now, just for a comparison, this is the full-size tube. Typically, you would get an artist grade. It's 14 milliliters. They also offer these really large 37 milliliter tubes, so you can see the size comparison there. You'll get like a generic paint swatch, but it's not really the actual paint swatch. Like you know, but it's helpful. You get permanence information, color name, transparency rating, and the pigment information on each tube. I like this set because you get all primaries. You can mix so much from it. And also, most of the colors here in this set are light fast. Now, this one here, Primary Red, is actually a Naphthol red. It is PR170 and it has a permanence rating of B, versus the others that all have a rating of A or AA. So, you know, I think this is all right for sketchbook work, but otherwise I'd probably, I'd prefer to get their quinacridone magenta instead, or possibly their permanent rose. But ultimately, this is a good set and I'm happy with it so far. So I've got a little flower well dish. I'm just going to go ahead and squirt the colors out and we're going to get started swatching and doing some color mixing and comparisons. Oh, and we're also going to compare to the M. Graham gouache because I've had those for over a year. I use them, love them. I did a video on them and I'm going to be doing a full review on them soon. So let me know down below if you're interested in a comparison video. Alright, so I squirted the paint out. I did want to show you that this is what they look like when you squirt them out. Most of them are very rich and creamy. The tubes are generously filled, but they don't go running all over the place the minute you open them. There was some binder separation here on the Primary Red. That really does not bother me at all, but I did want to show you that that can happen. If that happens, just stir it back in with a toothpick. It's really not a big deal. But I did want to show you that that is something that can happen. All right, so I got a Ruby Satin Filbert brush out, and they are my preferred brush for gouache. I'm going to go ahead and just take some off on my palette here. I've put down a strip of black ink that I've allowed to dry completely so we can test the transparency or the opacity of the color. Now let's just go ahead and put a strip of that down. Now this is Primary Yellow. This formulation is light fast. It has a permanence rating of A and it is a combination of PY74 and PY138. If you look, some of the tubes of Primary Yellow are a combination of PY1 and PY3. Avoid those ones that use that mixture because PY1 is fugitive. Also avoid the color Spectrum Yellow, Genuine Alizarin Crimson. I'd avoid Prussian Blue as well because especially when mixed with Zinc White, it really will fade in gouache applications. So a little bit of the pigment information. Also, the sap green uses PY1 in its mix, so I'd recommend the chromium oxide green as an alternative. The other color that I have here that's different from the pigment information that I found online is my green middle, permanent green middle. Mine is using PY3, PY74, and PG7. That's not the mixture that I found online. They were using some other pigment. So, and then that was more fugitive. So my guess here, what I'm thinking is because the new tubes are white, and this is the way the tube looks on dickblick.com and in Winsor & Newton's website. I think it's the old tubes with the shiny reflective metal packaging that still carries the old mixture with the fugitive pigments like Primary Yellow being PY1 and PY3. I think they reformulated these is what I'm saying. That's my guess, but I do want you to be aware, something that you really need to be aware of is if you're going to be buying these and light fastness is important to you, is that the mixtures change. So Primary Yellow I have is light fast. It's PY74, PY138, but there is some floating around out there, same color, same appearance, but turn the package over and look at the pigment information before you buy it because some of them have PY1, which is very fugitive, and PY3. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. So here is Primary Red, which is Naphthol Red. And I had to mix some of that up a little. Like I said, I had gotten some binder. I have to say, already right off the bat, comparing this like apples to apples to my old Winsor & Newton gouache, this is several years old, this color swatch. I mean, it's the set I got years ago, I used up and everything, but probably 10 years old now. I think this was probably using the old pigment, and I can just tell if I put a little swatch next to it, this is more transparent. This is definitely a little different. But we're going to keep moving on. I do think it's changed. I do think it's changed since I had it last time. So, but this should be the newest version that I have here because these are the sets that my Michael's Craft Store just got in brand new this week from the distributor. So, anyway, Primary Blue, which is Phthalo Blue. Now, they also have one called Phthalo Blue, but it's a mixture of Phthalo Blue and Phthalo Green. So, go with Primary Blue. You can see it is nice and creamy, but definitely a bit darker than what it used to be. Very opaque, though. For a Phthalo Blue, that's super duper opaque. If I compare it to M. Graham's Phthalo Blue here, which is completely transparent, that's really good. Although M. Graham is a different type of gouache altogether. It doesn't use opacifiers or chalk or anything like that. And I feel strongly that M. Graham, that Winsor & Newton definitely does. So here is the permanent green middle. Put some of that over. Nice. Very nice opacity. Look at that. I'm happy with that. I like this color or the chromium oxide green better than the sap green because as long as the current mixture still doesn't include PY1, if it still has PY1 in it, then I don't want it. But if they reformulated their sap green without that pigment yellow one, I'd get their sap green again. And their oxide green is very, very opaque. So here we have the black. I'm not really impressed by black, to be honest. I don't use black gouache, but for those of you who do, I'd like to swatch it for you. These have a nice creamy feel, good opacity. There is something different about Winsor & Newton's gouache compared to any other gouache I've used. I've obviously used M. Graham. I've also used like cheaper brands like Reeves, the Hemi gouache. Winsor & Newton's is the most opaque, I feel like, of any brand. Here is that Zinc White. I'm going to put a little bit out. I waited to put my whites out because I just didn't want to confuse them. There's a little binder separation on this one as well. But you can tell that you're getting really good quality pigment and that they're authentic. Like when you get a cheaper gouache, they'll all have the same weight to them. These feel very different in weight. My Primary Blue to my Zinc White. The Zinc White feels much heavier, and that's because these are real metals and minerals, you know, real pigment, and different pigments have different densities. So that's why they feel different. Like Phthalo Blue feels feather light compared to Zinc White. We'll go ahead and we'll swatch the Zinc White, which, be careful with Zinc White. A couple reasons I wanted to advise you on Zinc White. Here's why I tend to not use it. First off, Zinc White tends to crack in gouache application if you apply it too thickly. So use it for mixtures certainly, but don't use it for your bright sparkly white highlights at the end, and it's too transparent for that anyway. This really is a mixing white, as you can see. And also, I feel like more so in gouache form over acrylic. Like acrylic, it's more stable, but I think in gouache form it has a tendency to yellow a bit. My opinion. I'm not saying don't use Zinc White. I'm just saying definitely don't apply it too thickly. And here is the Titanium White or Permanent White. Now, you guys know already I love this. Obviously, I purchased a big tube and I've used a lot of this tube. Nice and creamy, really dense and thick as I pick it up. And you'll see instantly the difference between those two whites. If you've ever wondered and you weren't sure, here's the difference, you guys. I mean, that is just immediately going to cover up that black line, and this one just doesn't quite have the ability. Now, as that's drying, it's shifting lighter. the blue, the red, and maybe the green is shifting lighter. I felt like with M. Graham, there wasn't as much color shift. Maybe there was minimal, if any, color shift, really. It felt like with the M. Graham. These shift lighter, but they're even more opaque, I think, as they dry. So let's let them completely dry, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look. And I want to compare. Oh yeah, I can tell that's a different pigment. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but the new one is definitely different than the old one. And same thing with the blue. I feel like you can see they're different. I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but in person, I can see that blue is different. This is not a bad change, though. I think they're still very good, but let's go ahead and let them dry. So you know what? As that's drying, I've decided we should, I don't know how interested you guys would be in this, but let's do a little color mixing. Let's see what kind of colors that we can get. So here I've mixed the primary yellow with the primary red. I've got a nice orange there. I'm going to mix more yellow, see what kind of a yellowed orange. The yellow is always going to be weak. Like, let's be honest, no matter what brand of yellow you get, yellow is a weaker color in general. But I think it's a little bit weaker than I remember it. The old set, I think, was a little bit more opaque, perhaps. I could be wrong. But it's a lower tinting strength color, certainly. I think it's the lowest tinting strength color that we have here. But that's okay. So we got a little spectrum there of different oranges. I'm pretty certain we're not going to get a nice purple from that blue and that red, but we could certainly give it a go and try. Let's see. Oh, we have the red out already. Well, I'll put a little pile of red there. I think that red is more transparent because I think there was a binder separation issue there. That's what I'm thinking is happening. I don't have ultramarine blue in this set, but I have primary blue. And we can see what kind of purples that we can get. I think to really see that purple, we're going to have to add some of the white. So let's go ahead and add some zinc white, because it's our mixing white, right? So we'll add some of that. Zinc white is a low tinting strength transparent white. There it is. Those are some pretty purples. All right. Those are some pretty purples. Nothing wrong with that. You know, the most vibrant mix possible would have come from a cool red and a cool blue, like ultramarine and rose, but honestly, that's really good. That's really good. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, obviously, they give us a green here, but let's see what kind of a green that we can mix from the yellow and just a touch of the blue. I already did this when I got this set years ago, but this is a different set, so I want to see how they mix. Oh, yeah. Primary blue and yellow mix very nice together to make a nice green. That's pretty. I like that. I think it's a tiny bit of orange possibly in that, but that's okay. Now, what I want to do is I have some like orange and yellow mixed here on my brush. I want to see if I could kind of earth this green middle shade up a bit by mixing some of the yellow and a touch of the red, because that's very unnatural for me, that green. Let's try adding just a touch of the red to just dull that down a little. Yeah, I'm happier with that. That's still a little bit much. Let's see. Well, I think we're going to need more yellow. Let's put some of that out. And at this point, I'm just putting it right on the paper. There we are. Let's put a little of that in. Now, in case you're new and you don't know what gouache is sort of like an opaque watercolor. It's almost like a paintable pastel. You know, gouache and pastel have very similar formulations. It's pigment, gum arabic, and like chalk and opacifiers that make it very matte. Yeah, I still feel like it needs more of this red in it to just kind of dull it down, because that pigment in typical Winsor & Newton fashion is so bright and vibrant, which is a lovely thing. It means that the pigment is good quality, but it just, you have to work a little harder to make it dirty. But there's nothing, that's not a bad thing, you understand. Me over here spending an hour trying to mix like the perfect green. We'll add a little white to that so we can kind of see it. Okay, so mixing green is going to be maybe a little bit complicated, but I'm mixing like an earthy green that I'd be happy with. But we have some greens there. Definitely mixed a clean version of each of the secondary colors, so I'm very happy with that. All right, so I wanted to say I went back in to get some more of that red, and when I put it out, it is now very thick and rich and creamy. And I'm wondering if, and I don't want to like redo the swatch, but I think it would cover better now if I was to redo that swatch. Like, you know, here I have a little drop of ink. I think the coverage is just a little better now. Yeah, maybe not. But the consistency is certainly better. There's not as much of that gum arabic happening. So now what I want to do is I want to put out a small amount of the primary red in an even amount on both sides here. As even as I can get it. I mean, there's nothing really scientific about this, but those are pretty even little blobs, I'd say. And I want to show you the difference between the two whites that they have available. So I'm going to go ahead and put a similar amount of white. So that is my permanent white. I'm going to rinse the brush off. And let me get a very similar amount of the Zinc White. Maybe just a hair more of that. A little bit more. I'm trying really hard to be as accurate as possible. I think that's as maybe just a little bit more. Come on, gouache, cooperate. There, I think that's about a similar size blob that I have on my brush there. So I just want to show you the difference when I mix these two piles together of my red and my white. This is the Zinc White. So you can see that we've lightened this color, and you'll make it a little bit more opaque, but really it's so much more transparent than the titanium white. So it has a low tinting strength, but it's good for mixing. And they say that your color shift, a lot of gouache artists like Zinc White for mixing over titanium white because they say there's a less, it lessens the color shift from wet to dry. I don't really know how true that is, to be honest, but that's what they say. So here's the titanium white mixed with a very similar amount of red. Again, you know, there's nothing scientific about this, but you can see how much lighter that went. Hopefully the camera is going to do that justice. This went significantly lighter quicker because titanium white, or your permanent white in this instance is what they're calling it, is a higher tinting strength. See that? So that's kind of, besides being able to look at the swatches here and see the difference in transparency and opacity, the other difference between Zinc White and titanium white is that Zinc White has a little bit of a blue cast to it. It's just slightly cooler of a white, as where titanium white is just a hair warmer, a little bit more toward the yellow. But I think Winsor & Newton did a really good job with their Zinc White They're using PW5 instead of typically what you'd see, and I love Zinc White and acrylic, is PW4 for Zinc White. But they're using PW5. I'm not sure why, but it's not too cold. It's a little bit cooler than the permanent white titanium, but it's still, they're both pretty neutral. I have to say I think Winsor & Newton does a really good job with that. All right, so let's go ahead and take a final look. Here I mixed some, just a tiny touch of the primary red in with the primary blue, and you can see I was able to achieve something that was kind of close to ultramarine blue. I'd actually say it's closer to probably like Indothrone blue, but it's a warm blue nonetheless, and I thought it worked really well. There's really nothing wrong with it. I was impressed by how clear of the purples I could get, and that seemed to be the case with my last set here as well, and I'll show you that swatches a little bit closer up. I was able to mix some very clean secondary purples, oranges, yellows. Here, I wanted to show you, I mixed something of a gamboge using the primary yellow and just, again, the tiniest little touch of that primary red. And I just wanted to put a little of this primary yellow out just by comparison to show you. You know, this can be cooler like lemons or warmer like gamboge, like sunshine, depending on how you mix it. So that really is like a true primary yellow. All of these are like true primaries, and I think they're going to mix as cleanly as you can possibly expect them to. They blend really, really nice. They seem to have a good adherence to the substrate. I've never had issues really with cracking or flaking off when it comes to Winsor & Newton. The quality seems really, really good here. And I actually think the quality has improved some since the last time I bought this set. So, oh, but gosh, look at that mixing. And I believe I can get the exact same look here. I mean, I think I was able to get really close. But that permanent green middle, I think, is better and more opaque now than it was. So close up to show you the difference. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but I really think it's even better now than it once was. One thing that I noticed that's consistent between the two sets, the one from like 10 years ago and the one from today, is that the reflectiveness is a little bit inconsistent, meaning gouache is supposed to be completely matte and toothy. And for the most part, that's true with these. But some of the colors, like I can see it on my primary blue and my permanent white, have just a little bit of sheen to it. I don't think you'll be able to see on camera. Yeah, and even the resulting mixture I made with it, I don't think you'll be able to see it on camera, I'm sorry. But there is just a slight sheen to it. And what that means is that if you're an artist that likes to reproduce their work and scan it into a computer, that might cause some problem for you. Not sure, but I did want to go ahead and mention it. I do believe that I have the most updated version of the paint, which is in these white tubes. So this is the most current pigment information that I have. I do believe, because this is what Winsor & Newton's website shows, is this exact tube. So does Dick Blick and Jerry's Artarama. Some retailers are showing the old like shiny metal tube, and I think that's the old pigment information. The pigment information, there's a little bit of a discrepancy between certain colors. Like, again, primary yellow was fugitive in my opinion, but now it's not. And the permanent green middle definitely improved its light fastness by getting rid of PY1. So over here off to the side I have some notes, so we're going to wrap up with some final thoughts, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you a little quick comparison to the M-gram. So if you care about light fastness, there are definitely a good selection of colors in this range for you to choose from. The primary red is a naphthalate red, so I'm not sure. You really have to use your own discretion, your best judgment on what you feel comfortable with. I'd probably stick mostly to a sketchbook for that color. It's fine. It's moderately durable, but you know, especially as you move into tints and things, it can be a little bit problematic. So I would steer you toward a permanent rose, or quinacridone magenta. They're both quinacridone pigments and are going to do better for that. The primary blue is a permanence rating of A. It's good. The primary yellow is good. And of course the white and the black is good. They also have genuine cadmiums cobalts, quinacridones, oxide of chromiums, and umbers. Of course, use at your own best judgment and what's right for you. Use at your own risk. Some of those are highly toxic, but it's a trade-off. You'll also get really light, fast, bold pigments. And if you're planning to work in a sketchbook, or if you're doing like cartoon illustration work that's meant to be reproduced, then light fastness really might not matter at all to you. So, but if it does, some of the pigments that you should definitely avoid are PY1. This color's in Spectrum Yellow, in the old Primary Yellow, which was a mixture of PY1 and PY3. And there, you could walk into an art store tomorrow and find the old tube of Primary Yellow. So I want to make sure you know that, because it's not that old. I don't think it was just, I think maybe it was 2-3 years ago. I think they reformulated these. Or maybe even sooner. It was so soon ago that Dick Blick still has the pigment information for the other tubes. And I believe these are the newest. I think they've been reformulated to be better, I believe. But if you have any information on why there's a discrepancy in pigment information, why, what's going on with that, let me know. Prussian Blue, any Prussian Blue we consider fugitive nowadays, but especially if you're mixing it with Zinc White, and especially in gouache applications, I'd skip that altogether. And of course, any Opera Rose, any rose pigment really, usually except for permanent rose, I would avoid, because it usually uses that dye, that fluorescent dye. The sap green mixtures with PY1, also avoid those as well. I suggest the permanent green middle, as long as it's not one that has the PY1 mixture. The new one does not have that. And but oxide of chromium is a real kind of underrated pigment in the art world, I feel like, when it comes to opaque mediums, like pastel work, acrylic. I like oxide of chromium in acrylic, and I like it in gouache as well. Very opaque, bold color, and extremely light fast, but it can be a little toxic, so I just wanted to let you know that. So those are just some notes that I have there. I wanted to give you a brief comparison. I don't have any pigment to pigment comparisons, I don't think, because they're all probably using different pigments, but well, except the phthalo blue. So phthalo blue to phthalo blue, you can see Winsor & Newton's is much more opaque. Across the board, all the way across the board, Winsor & Newton is more opaque than the M. Graham. Azo Yellow to Primary Yellow. Yeah, I think the Primary Yellow is more opaque. Their Primary Red is Naphthol Red. They do have a Naphthol Red in M. Graham, but it's PR122, so it's more stable, more light fast, but it's warm. Still, I think I give it to Winsor & Newton, the opacity there. They also have a Winsor Red, which is a Pyrrole Red in their collection. I recommend that one as well for a red that's non-toxic. Or, well, safer than cadmium, rather, is what I mean to say. What else do we have? Well, you can kind of get an idea there. And I feel like I really like both of these lines of paint, and I'd probably purchase both brands. They feel very different to me. M. Graham is more transparent, but there's no extenders, fillers, opacifiers, or chalk. They feel more like painting with an acrylic paint or an oil paint. In that way, I can do some glazes. I can get more gradations and subtlety of color that might not be possible to achieve so much with this because it's so very opaque. Also, there's a honey component to these. These have honey in them, which keep them moist longer. They are very creamy and soft. I really like these. And overall, across the board, they tend to be more light fast than the Winsor & Newton. One issue that I've noticed across the board, whether it's this new set I have, this 10-year-old set that I had, or friends of mine who've had sets of Winsor & Newton gouache, occasionally, like I showed you earlier, and you can see it here as well with my Zinc White, there's a separation with the binder. You might have to squeeze out drops of gum arabic straight out of the tube. Sometimes you can stir it in with a toothpick. Other times you might just have to discard that drop of gum arabic, like get rid of the juice and don't stir it back in, because it'll make your paint more transparent, a little bit glossy, and you don't want that. So it can be a little bit of an issue overall. Again, this isn't a full review of this paint. It's just a first impressions, but I probably could give a review because, again, I have bought them before, but I think the formulation's changed a little bit. When I work with Winsor Newton's designer gouache, one thing that I want you to take away is that they feel different to me than any other gouache I've ever tried. They feel more substantial. The coverage is better. I think they add chalk. They're adding some opacifier, and I don't mind that. It's just, they blend really nice. They blend like a dream. They're creamy, they're smooth, they blend nice, and they just feel thicker. They feel more substantial than any other gouache I've ever used. I don't know how else to describe that. But if you apply it very, very thick, I think that there is probably more of a chance that these could crack versus like the M. Graham, for example, because I think the higher the chalk content, probably the more likely it is that it could crack. I don't think I've ever had that issue. I can't say I have with Winsor & Newton, but I do want just to put it out there. You know, you don't want to apply these too thick. Okay, so I just wanted to include a quick little bonus clip here in terms of the cracking issue that I suspected, and I am absolutely correct. I was sitting here playing around a little bit with it off camera after I'd stopped filming the video, and I could see that where I had a thick blob of the primary red, I can see cracks in it. I don't know how well that'll show up on camera, but I kind of have a feeling I could probably just... Oh, look at that. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, so see that? Now that doesn't mean it's poor quality gouache, absolutely not. That means that's just one of the things when you get something when you get a gouache that has a lot of chalk in it, or to make it very opaque, that also means you really can't apply it too thick because it'll start to crack and flake off. Now that was a decently thick blob, but still, yeah. And I've not had that ever happen to me with the M. Graham, and I think that's because it doesn't have the chalk and the opacifiers in it. It uses more pigment to be more opaque and larger pigment particles, and there's better, more flexible binder, I think, in that. So I did want to mention that. Oh, and one more quick thing. Don't put out more paint than you can use in one sitting, because the M. Graham activates really well the next day with water. This really doesn't. And don't put it in a palette to sit, because it will crack and fall out of the palette and crumble. It's not something you put in a palette and then come back to days later, weeks later. It's not. Just put out as much as you'll use for a single painting session. Okay, and that's really all I have to say for today. I know I rambled probably. I hope this wasn't too long of a video. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe before you go. Let me know what other content that you might be interested in. And as always, have a great day, have a blessed day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!